In this interview, Odd speaks with author and avid pop culture nerd, Allison Church. Though you might find her work under a different name, Allison is transitioning. Most of her work you'll find under the name Donald Allen Kirch. She has been publishing books since 2010. She is a horror and science fiction writer. Though she packs in some weighty and wonderful life lesson between the prose. We hope you enjoy this interview and maybe learn something along the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Miss Allison Church. She is my guest for this interview. Allison, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm alive. I'm not looking forward to the storm that's coming.
Neither am I. We're getting one here too.
Snow is like the only four-letter word that I don't like.
Snow only belongs in three places: a Christmas card, television, or possibly in a snow globe.
I don't even want to see it then. No. Nope. Nope. I'm outside screaming global warming. Let's get this over with. So I do want to address the elephant in the room. Most of your work is under a previous name.
Yes.
You are transitioning. So when we do link, everyone will see work listed under Donald Kirch.
Yes.
But
consider them my Richard Bachman books.
Yeah. Or your pen name.
Yeah, that too. A DBA.
Yeah. So I do want to at least talk a little bit about that. If I remember correctly from what I've seen, you're about a year into the transition.
Yes, about a year and a half. Yeah.
And have you dealt with a lot of blowback from it? I mean,
some. I do have a younger sister who will have nothing to do with me.
I'm sorry.
So am I. I'm this might sound bad, but I'm kind of relieved that my parents are passed. My father was a Marine drill sergeant and a Korean War veteran. He would have killed me. If he wouldn't have killed me, he probably would have paralyzed me from the eyebrows down. And yeah. I was his only, I'm doing quotation, air quotation. I was his only son. So
see, the older generation, on the one hand, I kind of get it because it's scary and new, and everybody hates everything that's scary and new.
Yeah, we're all afraid of the unknown.
I made great strides with my mother, though. My mother wasn't a hateful or a mean type person, but she was she didn't understand. She
was set in her ways.
And when my younger brother was born, I noticed a few things with him that, gave me pause for the cause, essentially. And so I would say things, and my stepfather was staunchly against it. No son of mine is going to be gay. Gay marriage is the worst thing that's ever happened. It devalues my marriage. And so I'm a natural born instigator. And so I went after him, and I would ask him, well, how does it devalue your marriage? It doesn't have any effect on you. And he never gave me an answer. Well, years later, my brother started to, blossom. And my mother pulled me aside and she's like, why does your brother wear makeup? He comes home from school with makeup on. Why? And I was like, well, I don't know what his reasoning is, but we should support it. Whatever the reasoning is, we should support it. And she's like, it's just so weird. I was like, it might be weird, but times are changing, Mom. A man isn't necessarily defined by, scratching his crotch and yelling at the TV football game.
That's true. That's true. I've seen some people who are like Vietnam vets. I've seen some people who are Desert Storm vets. Actually, they make me jealous because they look prettier than I do.
And I live in a household that I am the only white cis male. I am the only straight person in my household.
For now, you never know. Life can deliver you a curveball one day.
I've experimented in some ways over the years and nothing stuck.
Huh. At least you had the courage to experiment.
Yeah, well, everybody is open to change if they're not so close-minded.
Amen.
But as such, I'm a huge advocate, and I will defend you till my dying breath and everyone else in your position, because just because you're born one way does not necessarily mean that's how you're meant to be.
Thank you. Bless you.
But anyways, so I just wanted to address that because, like I said, all the links and stuff are that we link to will have the Donald Kirch name. So I wanted my listeners and the people watching the interview to understand. No, I didn't have a brain fart. It's just how things are. Okay, so you just celebrated a birthday.
Yes, I did.
I will not say how what the age was, but I will ask. One, I will say happy birthday belated.
Thank you.
And I want to know, what'd you do to celebrate?
Some friends and I, we went out and we had a nice dinner. Got a little schnookered. I got drunk. We had fun. There, like everything else in life, there's always someone that comes along and tries to put a wet blanket on what you're doing.
The turd in the punch bowl.
Yes. In this case, it was a Jesus Crispy who had to come up and tell me that my soul's going to rot in everlasting depths of hell. And I said, thank you. Would you like a pass? I've never understood why people got to do that. I mean, even Christ took time to party. He went to dinners, as I had hookers wash his feet. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying that, but I just don't understand it. I mean, of all the religious sects in the world, it seems like Christianity is the wet proverbial blanket. I mean, they would bum people out at a funeral.
Yeah. My response to that guy would have been like, cool, at least I don't have to deal with you in the afterlife then.
Well, it made me think of something that Ralph Waldo Emerson said. He said, plan your days in heaven and plan your nights in hell, because that's where all the interesting people are.
Yes. At one time, I had a chauffeur's license, and I would tell everybody, don't worry, I'll be driving the party bus to hell.
I'm taking an ice truck so I can make some fortune at least there.
Yeah, why not have a burgeoning or a booming career in the afterlife?
Why not?
Now, I will admit, a lot of your early life, like information that I was able to find, was fairly sparse. I know you were born in Culver City, California, and
Yes.
you've lived in at least 22 different states.
Yes.
What hardships? You said your dad was military, so Army brat, I'm going to assume, military brat.
Yes. If anybody who has gone to military bases and stuff like that, there's ultimately a time after you play the base lottery that your father or mother is not going to like where they've been stationed, and they're going to go into a funk. My dad went through a lot of funks, and since I was never boy enough for him, I intimately found out a couple times what a ping pong ball felt like when it was bounced up against the wall.
That sucks.
Yes, it did. But at the same time, he had a lot. I'm not defending what he did, but he also had a lot of monsters. He was a POW. He escaped from a POW camp, went back into active duty, and went through the entire Korean War and all that. And then when he came home, the Veterans Administration was saying, well, this was a United Nations action. You're going to have to go to the UN. And then when they went to the UN says, you're an American soldier, go through your government. So there was a catch-22 thing going on. By the time he was approved for a heart surgery he desperately needed, he was already 6 months in the ground.
Ooh.
So I forgive him most of the things that he did. In fact, one of the best things I can tell people, if you have monsters in your closet, open the door and forgive them. It's the best thing you can do.
I used to work as a recovery support specialist in a psych and substance hospital. And
Ooh.
one of the things that I would tell all of the patients, because almost all of them had mommy or daddy issues of some sort. We all do. It doesn't,
Yes.
I don't care. If you're listening to this right now and you think you're a well-adjusted citizen, you're not. You got mommy and daddy issues in there somewhere.
If you're an orphan, you have mommy and daddy issues.
Unless you're Batman, then you have gadgets. But the one thing that I would tell them constantly is you have to remember that your parents are just fucked up individuals that were trying to do the best that they could. And you have to forgive them for the things that they did because they were trying their best and their best wasn't good enough. And that happens. That happens with all of us. But to let them dictate how the rest of your life goes because you're so hung up on that stuff, You don't have them to blame for that. You have you to blame for that.
Good point.
Yeah. So the hardships of moving around though on you, I mean,
it was hard for me to make friends because I was always afraid that I would lose them. And with the lifestyle that my father had, because he'd go where they needed him. There was one time we settled and moved so fast, I didn't even have enough time to memorize my teachers' names. I mean, zip, boom, we were gone. He'd come in one day and said, we're bugging out. Pack what you can, we'll put it in the truck in the U-Haul. Everything else stays. And it is true, when you, as a child, when you lose a friend, it's just as traumatizing as losing a loved one, you know, to a death or something like that. It's like it became hard. I remember the first girlfriend that I had, it tore me up to have to tell her that tomorrow she wouldn't see me anymore. We tried to stay in contact like all good meaning people do, but time marches on, and you know, but yeah, I try to look at it in a positive way because I've seen parts of this country, and I've seen parts, you know, I've seen both oceans and the Gulf. I've seen things that most people, you know, they don't go outside the circumference of maybe 25 miles of where they live.
well, that was going to be my next question is, what were the positives for moving around so much?
Oh, I saw so much. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't exist anymore, but my father was a big fan of hole-in-the-wall restaurants. So whenever we had to go west or from west to the Midwest, we'd go down the old Route 66. He loved those truck stops. And I have to admit, it was kind of fun seeing genuine Navajo blankets made in China, you know, stuff like that. And some of the food was good, some of the food was greasy, and most of the food was greasy good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love a greasy spoon. I love a good hole in the wall place, and I've actually traveled along bits of Route 66 myself. So unfortunately, I saw the more depressing parts where it was the hollowed out decays of what America once was.
Yes, that's sad. We gave it all up for Walmart.
I'd like to give Walmart back at this point. I'll tell you what.
Ollie.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I will trade you Walmart, Amazon, and Apple to get back Americana.
Yeah, I used to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Barnes and Noble. I like going there. I love bookstores, but I prefer the mom and pop used bookstores. There you can find treasures. There is no such thing as a used treasure at a Barnes and Noble. It's all like, you know, it always amazes me. Why is it all the bestsellers are only from like gazillionaire authors? They don't have an unknown that comes up. Maybe once in a while they'll have an upstart, but I learned a long time ago that most of that shelf space on that bestseller is bought by the publishers. So there's no way, there's no way that I and my small press that I'm dealing with could compete with those people. So that's why I go out and I talk to people and I tell them my story and tell them how I got my inspiration for my stories and all that stuff. So moving around is not a bad thing. It makes you understand the pulse of the people, and the people, not the government, the people are what make this country, you know, strong.
Some of them anyways.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have those people, like I said, who go to Walmart and their brain's already been turned into Swiss cheese.
And I would like to say too that I have found more personality, more heart, and better stories in those small press publishers than I have on the bestseller list.
Yes, but I will admit that there are a few of them. I love Stephen King's work. I also like the late, great Richard Matheson's work. I mean, I've read almost everything that man has printed. My only regret is that I never got to meet him before he passed on.
I'm a King fan. I also like Kuntz.
Yes, I like him too.
But that is purely because he has an entire series that carries my on-air moniker with it. So, because I go by Odd on air.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Yeah, well, I'm one of the few people that have been able to give himself their own nickname and have it stick. But Dean Koontz wrote the Odd Thomas series.
Yes.
And absolutely love the series. And but like I said, I have found more enjoyment, as much as I love Dean Koontz or Stephen King or any of the other, best-selling authors. I have found a lot more enjoyment and found that the books stick with me more from the small press writers.
Well, some of the classic sci-fi stuff, it started out in Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Who Goes There? The Puppet Masters. All these, they started out with what would be today called third-rate garage sale press people.
At one point, nobody knew who Ray Bradbury was, but he was still knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, that's another person that I wish I could have met.
Yeah, they're great. I'm into like sci-fi and horror, so.
Me too.
So I got to ask, what's your earliest memories of becoming interested in the darker corners of fiction?
I was in a reading class when I was in like the second or third grade. I'd already been reading advanced reading for the age that I was supposed to start reading. And we were reading this really dumb book. I can't tell you what it was like, but it sounded something like run, 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 condescending stuff. I brought in Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And I started reading that secretly behind the book that I was supposed to be reading. Like the old, you see the Animal House and all that, they'd like put a Playboy or a comic book behind their science book, and that's what they do. It actually fascinated me because here we have a book about that got everything in it. It's got lore, it's got ghost stories, it has the social race classes pit against each other, bullying, meekishness, education, stupidity, fright. It had everything. And when I was even that young, I appreciated it. And I'd say that probably I owe everything that I am probably to Washington Irving, because he started me out on reading creepy stuff.
All right. Well, that would, actually, no. So would that be the book then, or the author that would have solidified the interest to make you say, this is what I want to do?
He was the springboard. And I went to Edgar Allan Poe, and I loved him. But I would have to say that, like I said, the one writer that probably propelled me to become a professional author was Richard Matheson. And it's like what's tragic about him is that you tell 9 out of 10 people, yeah, I dig Richard Matheson. They'd go, who? They don't know him, but they do know him. He wrote such books that were the basis of movies: Stir of Echoes, What Dreams May Come, The Legend of Hell House. He even wrote an original Star Trek episode called The Enemy Within, the classic one where Kirk turned into good Kirk and bad Kirk, and they had about putting them back together. He wrote that. He also, another Star Trek connection, he wrote the Twilight Zone episode that a very young William Shatner was in, where there was something on the wing of the plane.
Right.
Spock.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine too, because I'm a Star Trek fan. The classic Trek that you mentioned was probably I'm almost betting it was the basis for the Locutus story arc.
It's possible. It's possible. A lot of things came out of that episode. The Vulcan neck pinch was introduced by Leonard Nimoy in that episode. The fact that Kirk's command style comes from his evil side. I mean, I guess a captain's got to do what a captain's got to do. I love that. When Richard Matheson originally wrote it, he wanted it to be Spock, where Spock would deal with his human side and his Vulcan side. But Leonard Nimoy kind of suggested to him that we're going to do. We're going to do 2 romance styles with Spock here in the future. We don't want to take away any of his mystique. We might consider doing that later.
And they did.
And yeah.
Yeah. I know you're a fan of the paranormal as well.
Yes, very much so. I love things that can't be explained by simple linear logic. And the paranormal is an excellent example of that. I mean, it's everything we are. Hell, it's even I don't think there's a religion out there that isn't based on some essence of the paranormal.
Mm-hmm. Um, ever have a paranormal experience?
Yes, I've had several. Have you ever heard of a place called the Sally House?
Tell me the state, and I probably have.
It's in Atchison, Kansas.
Yes. My wife is a huge paranormal nut, and she will tell me about places left and right. And for some reason, the only reason they stick is when I know the state.
Oh, that's okay. That's cool. Well, I was with a group of people. We were going to try to put together some, you know, finely crafted 5 to 10 minute documentaries and put them on a website, see what we could do with it. That was our first project. It didn't fly, but it was like a life-changing incident for me because we, through luck or fate, actually got in contact with the owner of the Sally House. And he said, I'm between tenants right now. If you guys want to come up for the next 2 weekends, you're happy. I can let you in on Friday and I'll come and get you guys on Sunday, Sunday night. We jumped at it. We said yes, because at that time, the haunting, it was called the Sally House, but it was also known as the Heartland Haunting. It had been featured a couple times on a Fox television series called Sightings. And we went there and we had a camera crew. We had groups of technicians and stuff. We walk in. Instantly when we walk in, the cameraman gets deathly sick. And he didn't have a cold or anything, nothing, no signs. And he got deathly sick. He went outside. He's doing the Linda Blair. He's decorating and watering the entire front lawn. He goes home. He never came back. He never did tell us why, whether he had food poisoning or what, but that was weird. We were there for about 9 hours and nothing happened. We got to explore all 3 areas of the house. Now, backstory on Sally. She is a ghost of a little girl. And story goes that the house used to be owned by the mayor of Atchison, Kansas. He was also a doctor. And he was also the town drunk. And the story deviates in 2 points. Either Sally had a problem with a ruptured appendix, or she was punished and put out on the porch on a cold winter night to sleep without a blanket. Either way, she ended up dying, connected with his drinking. And after that happened, you'd think that everybody would be shocked. Unfortunately, this was a time when skin color was a gauge on how you succeed in life. And they just looked at it, oh, well, it's just the death of a servant's child. Whoop-de-doo, la-di-da. Next. But he left, and the house was like between people and everything. But it seemed like there was something in the house that would always attack the men. They'd either end up with scratches, or they'd feel like there was a burning sensation on their neck or something like that. So the house got a reputation of being haunted. And that's why they call it the Sally House, because that was the name of the child. Well, we're going through all this stuff and we're upstairs, and there's this one room called the Sally Bear Room. And the reason why it's called that is because people who come and try to contact this spirit will leave a stuffed bear in the room in honor of Sally. And we had a variety of people. We had a psychic whom I did not find genuine. We had a witch. She was in the Wiccan arts, and I knew her. She was a friend, so she took what she did seriously. We had 2 ghost hunters who had like all the equipment, EMF detectors, ion detectors, ghost box, everything. And we had the film crew. The Wicca person wanted to do a Ouija board reading in the Sally room. And she picked me because of all the people in the room, I was the skeptic. She knew I would do nothing to screw up what she was doing or assist. So we're doing this Ouija board thing. The planchette is not moving at all. And she's saying, I don't understand this. It's not working. I said, could it be because of me? I take this as this is a kid's game to me. This is a good horror movie. That's what this is. That's all the witch board is to me. And we stopped, and I'm going outside, and I kept this book that had all my notes in it. And I was writing on this book, I don't think there's anything here. We're wasting our time. And I underlined the word wasting my time 1,000 times almost. And as I got on the second step to the staircase going down to the first floor, my life changed. I felt a pair of young adult female hands do this to my shoulders. And I felt a pair of young child's hand grab me by the ankles. And I looked behind me, left and right, to see if there was anyone playing a game. I was the only one there. And within a fraction of a second of me doing that, the hands on my shoulders pushed and the hands on my ankles pulled. And if it hadn't been for me dropping everything that I had, including an ion detector that got smashed to crap, and put one hand against the wall, the other one on the banister, I would have gone ass over tea kettle down this entire long staircase, possibly breaking my neck.
Yikes.
And I went into that house a 100% skeptic. Now I'm an optimistic skeptic. I still hold my skepticism, but I can be persuaded if it's powerful enough.
Yeah, I count myself as a skeptical believer as well.
Yeah, because unfortunately in this world today, this world, any time period, people can be tricked.
Mm-hmm.
It happens all the time. During the spiritual movement of the 1880s, there were people making money hand over fist. And it took people like Harry Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to kind of show that these people are just, bullshit music.
So not a lot of people know about this, but I myself am a writer as well. I've got one story that I self-published through Amazon,
Cool.
but I'm working on others. And that is a time period that I like to play with because of the snake oil salesmen and the charlatans and whatnot, because that's a rich part of our history. And there's so much you can do with it when you're writing.
Yes.
But back to the paranormal. My wife is obsessed with Waverly.
Oh,
yeah.
I've always wanted to go there. I've always wanted to go just to see the shadow people.
She's been there. At the time, she was pregnant.
Ooh.
And had just found out that she was.
Ooh, okay.
And she went on a tour. And they got to, I think, the third floor. And something was said along the lines of that people have gotten sick, or, pregnant women have had problems and stuff like that. So if there's anyone with heart conditions or that might be pregnant at this point, we recommend that you leave. And she raised her hand and said, I might be pregnant. And they rushed her out as fast as they could. She ended up miscarrying later.
Oh.
But it speaks to the power of the paranormal and the power of true entities and whatnot. And one of the biggest points that I give to the paranormal being real is, if you look at what happens around this country, it's almost like the entire country is built on top of an ancient Indian burial ground.
Well, they lived here a heck of a lot longer than Western European people have.
Yeah. But I am obsessed with a single paranormal place as well, but I've never been there, and I hope to get there one day before I die.
Where's that?
The Winchester House.
Been there.
I for some reason am infatuated with that place.
It's amazing because it not only does it show the paranormal sphere of influence that it does hold, but also the eccentric sphere of influence that the idle rich have. Mm-hmm. Because she was told by a medium that she was going to be pursued by the spirits of those who had been killed by the Winchester rifle.
Yep.
But as long as she constructs or builds on her home, they will be at bay and they cannot reach her. And I dig it that she had the ability to do that and the means. But at the same time, talking about the snake oil salesman of the spiritual age, I'm just wondering if this was somebody who knew somebody who was a carpenter who just needed a buck.
Well, I mean, I would believe that, except for the fact that she rotated crews frequently.
Yeah, that's where the skepticism has to really work if it wants to stay with that logic,
Yeah,
because
because
she didn't want people to know or be able to tell the spirits by them listening to her or listening to them where they could go and what to do and stuff. And if I remember right, it used to be the estate was like was bigger than it, double that. But in the great earthquake of 1908, some of it, fell to the ground and they
yep,
just cleared it out and kept building on.
yep. Like I said, I would be willing to sign on with that belief of, the medium might have had some construction company family members or whatnot, but the fact that she rotated crews so much, it's one of those things that I'm just like, well, maybe, but maybe not.
Now, it's a fascinating place. I mean, it literally has stairs that go up to nothing. There's one door that's called the door to nowhere, where you open it up and it just goes outside.
Yeah, it's what, like a 10-foot drop.
Yes, and I think only Spider-Man or Superman could probably do that. But and there's like
Do that and
there's
survive. Anyone can
yes,
make the 10-foot drop.
yeah, we'd all get gravity poisoning, but they would. There's this one room that's in the house called the Blue Room. And it was from that room that mediums would come and hold seances with Miss Winchester. They had I only know this because I've been there. They had this one like 2-pane window on the floor that when you opened it up, you could take a basket and it would go down into the kitchen. And if they're having a long seance or a long night reading, they could get their dinner sent up to them from the kitchen and just raise it up and close the window.
Kind of like a dumbwaiter.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
It's a very cool, and even though it's crazy, it's all done in good taste. It's all done with the Victorian-esque kind of carpentry
Oh yeah,
craftsmanship.
it's
It was,
absolutely gorgeous.
yes, it's like you have stained windows that don't have a window. They're just like up against a brick wall. You have doors that when you open them up, there's a brick wall. And
Yeah.
there's so many I think there's only like one bathtub in the entire mansion, though. It's like probably made you know mornings very interesting.
That house is as insane as it is beautiful.
It is. It is. It. I think it's a living monument to the uncertainty of how certain we are when it comes to the paranormal.
Mm-hmm. All right. Knowing God, winner of the 2019 Independent Press Award for Best in Fantasy, along with the 2019 NYC Big Book Award for Favorite in Fantasy. It's a wonderful story that definitely, without giving too much away, makes you really question what love really is and how your interpretation of it kind of cements your place in the world. The story concerns a man named Nathan, who after a failed suicide attempt finds himself hospitalized and then soon after institutionalized. Soon after release, he meets a beautiful female in a nearby park named Amanda, who claims to be God. Needless to say, it is a must read. It's an incredible concept. You say that the character of Nathan is very much an extension of yourself in the narrative. What are some
Yeah.
of the biggest parallels between you and Nathan in this arc?
I've always questioned the fact that we're probably worshiping slightly off center through kings, popes, and other people rewriting and retracting and adding to the Bible. The message probably isn't as pure as we would like it to be, but then again, that's what faith is for. That's one of the aspects of Nathan. The other one is that I will say that at one particular time in my life, I did try to take my own life. And luckily I had friends who were, counselors and stuff. So we got to keep it within the cocoon that I was in. I did not have to go to a mental ward or get tested for 72 hours to make sure that I wasn't Fruit Loops and stuff like that. And I did that in the suicide attempt in the book. That is pure me. I, to this day, still remember all the thoughts I had and all the depression I was going through. And I wanted to put that down in the book. And because they say that a book is better if it comes from, experience and the visceral um, bitterness of life or glory of life, however you want to look at it. So I use that, and I don't think there's a one of us at one time or the other wouldn't like to sit on a park bench and just talk to God.
No,
not as a deity, not as a worship object, but just talk to him and go, why the platypus? Were you high?
I actually know the answer to that one. Or at least I think I know the answer to that one.
Oh, please share.
The platypus exists so we understand that we don't have to take life so seriously.
Makes sense. It's a good way of throwing the bird up at Darwin too.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mammal, but you lay eggs. Yeah. The adding of the Archangel Gabriel into the story was just simply because in most of the Western, the three great religions, that Archangel plays an important part in all of them. And I just wanted it to, if it was going to be a New Testament that came at the end of this story, I wanted that angel to take care of it because he's, had experience. And the names themselves mean something too. Nathan was possibly the greatest Judaic prophet. His last name, Andrews, is after the Apostle Andrew, who was the first to recognize Christ for whom he was. And the name Amanda in Hebrew means worthy of love. So what better name for God than Amanda?
And I'm sure this was chosen purposefully.
Purposely, yes. But my favorite character in the entire book, believe it or not, is Lucifer, because we got him wrong too in the story. There's two. He's known by three names, but there's two names he will absolutely go. He hates being called the devil, and he hates being called Satan, because these were words that were added later, and he prefers Lucifer, or you can call him the morning star, kind of like on the television series Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
And while God's down on earth, she forgets the very ancient proviso that Lucifer had put in the pact that was the peace treaty between the Great Rebellion that, we all know as him being cast out of heaven and all that. If he does not stay in heaven, by default, the kingdom goes to him. So there's that dynamic that's playing in the story too. Because, when God signed it, he's God, he's going to be in heaven. I see no problem with this, kind of thing. But never in his existence did God think that he was going to fall in love with a human and want to go down and find out why people are killing themselves. What's wrong? The world is meant to be this way so that you can learn your lessons, not give up and, punch out early.
Right. Yeah.
It goes through all those philosophies and stuff.
Now, I know you consider Knowing God to be one of your more challenging works. Can you give us some insight into why it was such an obstacle for you?
Well, I used to be a Catholic.
We won't hold it against you.
They did.
Well, I know. I have met a few.
They totally kicked me out of the church. I can't go get communion or attend mass or say a confession. All the things that as a Catholic I took, solemnly. I mean, I went through 14 years of Jesuit Catholic school. It's like, it was a part of my life. And then when I lost it, I had to redefine my definition of faith. And that in itself, I don't care what religious tack you take in life, is not an easy thing.
I've never had that crisis of faith moment. I wasn't brought up with religion. I count myself as one of the happy heathens. I thumb my nose at religion every chance that I get, just because I think it's silly at times that so much hardship and so many terrible things have been done in the name of a fairy tale.
Well, that's a healthy argument. I honestly believe that anybody that can make an argument and make it stick is okay in my book. Um, in the psychological aspect, but if you don't want to go into the, I remember what Sigmund Freud once said in a paper that he wrote. He said, if there was not a God, we would most likely invent one.
Yeah, well, we did,
And it's human nature to have an all-knowing person, entity, thing that we can go to with our troubles and just, like St. Francis, bare ourselves naked and say, come on, what do I need to do?
I think that's because all of us are looking for peace of mind and comfort, to try and find or figure out what our place in the world is. And
Yes.
when it comes to religion, I don't necessarily have that big of a problem with it. It's the followers that I take issue with at times. I understand the need for that comfort, that peace of mind, that feeling of belonging, that sense of community. All of
Yeah.
the aspects that go into someone having religion or having faith, because I think faith is a better way to say it.
Yes. Yeah.
I get. It's just, why do you gotta be so unbearable about it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I tried to explore in it too. There's one scene where I went with the theory that yes, God created the world, but what man creates, he really doesn't know too much of. And the perfect example of that, the most innocent one I could think of, a fan said that it was almost like a Starman moment. You remember in Starman when he tasted Dutch apple pie for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's sitting down at the breakfast table and she sees a stick of butter, and she's staring at it. She doesn't know what it is. She puts her finger in it and she tastes it and goes, that's butter. And he's looking at her going, yeah. And they have an argument, and they were bringing up the story about the Garden of Eden. And as she's going back to her room, huffing and puffing to put on her clothes, she goes, oh, and by the way, it wasn't an apple. It was a peach. A little stuff like that. There have been some friends of mine who are devoutly devout, who read that book, and it cost me a friendship or two. That's how I know it's good.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. So the short story I mentioned that I wrote does deal a lot with religion. It's a story that rattled around in my head for 5 years. I think it's like 13 pages. It's very much a short story. But there's a twist. And I had put out, I need someone, I need people to read it. And I had a few people message me, and they are devout, one of which being my sister-in-law.
Oh boy.
And I had to tell my sister-in-law respectfully, I'm not going to let you read it because I don't want you to be offended or feel insulted. And which made her just want to read it even more. And I explained to her that it deals with religion in a way that could be construed as disrespectful, but that's not what I meant. And I don't want to cause problems between us. There were a few friends that read it that, it did cause problems. And that, like you said, that's how you know it's good.
Yeah. And if anybody is a fan of audiobooks and they don't have the time to read but want something to listen to and from work, it's also on Audible as an audiobook, and it won Best in Fantasy Romance at the Audio Book Reviewer Awards this year. So there's that too.
So we will link to all of that. Finally, for now, with Knowing God, there is one last thing I want to touch on. We'll end up coming back to it. There's a quote in the book that stuck with me that was beautifully worded and so deep. Amanda speaks to Nathan. Dear, love is not a sin. It is simply love. Of all of mankind's faults, I wish for you to understand. There is no good. There is no bad. There is only love. Enjoy it while you can. This is such a profound bit of dialogue, And I know what it means to me, but what does it mean to you personally?
There was this one girl that I absolutely adored. It was when I was in my junior year of high school. I would have done anything for this girl. If she would have told me to dive face first into a fan, I would have done it. She was beautiful. She was effervescent. She was one of those people, those souls. The minute she walked into a dark room, it projected sunlight and beauty. She killed herself. And probably that was the most painful thing that I've ever gone through. And usually when I write a story, and if it has a main character in it that's female, including Amanda, I can't help but base that character on my memory of her. It still affects me today, over 40 years later. Every time I talk about it, it makes me teary-eyed. Life and love are one of those transcendental figures. It's different to every individual who experiences either of them. But to just lose your battle to your demons and to end life and love takes away all the infinite alternative plots in a person's life and the lives that they touch so much that I just couldn't understand why she couldn't come and talk to me about it. And it's that I think when I was saying stuff like that, or and there's also a passage in it where God tells his best friend Christy, that she does not consider her being a lesbian an abomination. And that one of the things that everybody, when they're given life in my book, Amanda explains, I want you to experience love so that when you come to my kingdom, you can talk about something that's even more beautiful and powerful than me. And there's a point in it where she says, even I was created by love. Love is the most powerful thing in the universe. And I still and firmly do believe that.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Love will move mountains. Love will make you do the craziest things that you never thought were possible,
Yes.
for yourself or for others. My wife and I have one of those weird Hallmark movie meet cute moments of love where I royally pissed her off before we were even really dating.
Oh boy.
And I showed up with a rose and her favorite drink from Starbucks and basically threw myself upon the mercy of her love. And, luckily it worked. She's still with me. But I believe in love. I wish we as a society, or as a race, as a human race, as a species, could focus more on love than hate.
Yes, I do too.
And it seems to be a very difficult thing, like a tall order to ask for some reason. And I don't get why, because it takes more effort and time to be hateful. Like, you have to think up dumb shit to say to try to hurt people.
Yes. Or do dumb shit.
All that time and energy spent doing that, why not put it into being a good person and helping others, or being compassionate?
That would be great. Hate is, you can almost, use the symbolism of Lucas's version of the Force. Hate just appears simpler, more seductive, and more primal. Whereas love is kind of like the light side of the Force. You got to work your ass off to keep it.
Well, and it makes sense too, because we're psychologically predisposed, like the way our brains are wired. We remember bad more than we do good. I bet you right now, if I were to say, list off 5 of the worst things that ever happened to you, you'd be able to go boom, 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 boom. Give me 5 of the best things that ever happened to you, and you might be able to fire some off, but you'd have to stop and think a little bit probably about them more than the 5 terrible things that ever happened to you.
Good point.
And that's survival. That's the survival instinct, is because and another thing that I would tell the patients that I worked with is we learn more from failure than we do anything else. We learn nothing from success.
Pain is an attention getter.
Yes. Trust me, I know. All right. Are there any other characters in your body of work that are directly influenced by how you perceive yourself?
Well, not to sound egotistic, but every single one of them, because in every story that I write, one of the characters, whether it be a woman or a man, is actually me in that story. So in my mind's eye, when I'm creating the story and I'm typing and I see the picture, the motion picture in my mind, and I'm writing it, and the people are, one of the characters is always me. That's how I invest my mind and my heart in my stories, because either at the end of it, I mean, it's usually the protagonist. If it's not the protagonist, it's someone who assists the protagonist. And I want this person to succeed. I also want this person to grow. And when this, believe it or not, when this person grows fictitiously, it's actually helping me grow, because the problem when I'm writing the story is, I guess I could say, my own personal demon that I'm arguing with at the time. And every book has, like I said, and it's a game that I play with my close friends. After they read the book, they know that one of the characters is me. And I say, can you guess which character I was? Sometimes they get it on the nose. Sometimes I have to, nope, thank you for playing.
It's funny because I always write myself as the antagonist.
Oh, okay. Well, the antagonists in my stories are usually my father.
That makes sense based on what you told me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I write myself as the antagonist, and the short story that I have is very much that is I see my role in life is to help others. I'm not in this for me. And my viewpoint in movies and books and TV is that's the antagonist's role, is to help the protagonist grow.
I mean, what would Sherlock Holmes be without Moriarty?
Oh, one of the best antagonists.
Yeah. Intelligent, graceful, a gentleman.
Wit.
But very ruthless. Wit, yes. But very, very ruthless, and don't let your guard down, because you just killed yourself.
Yeah. Well, the antagonist in my story is a mix of game show host and just the asshole that we all know. And it's very much how I see myself. And most of the stories that I've written, like I said, I've written myself as the antagonist and completely fabricate the protagonist based on 6 or 7 different people I know putting personality traits together.
I do the same thing. I think someone asked Sir Arthur Conan Doyle once if he was anything like Sherlock Holmes or, the rest of the characters. And he said it's impossible for any writer worth their salt to create any character without an element of their own soul in it, because this is coming from you. And if you cannot do that, it's not good. It's not good writing.
Yeah, because it usually ends up being either who you are or who you wish you were.
Either way, yeah. But either way, it's magic.
Yeah. Now, I understand authors don't always get final say in books and cover art and whatnot. Did you have any input on the EC Comics like covers for Drop Dead Gorgeous or Dark Passenger?
Yes. The artist who did those, his name, I should say her name is, because she's transgender as well. Her name is Zoe Crockett. She goes by the nom de plume Smooch. And she does very, very good erotic artwork. And it's usually of transitioning, like through magic or something like that. We befriended each other. We're still friends. I think she's a glorious person and a wonderful artist. I commissioned her to draw these. She drew them, I inked them, and I colored them myself. So she's got total credit for being the genius to come up with that. She asked me, what was I looking for? I was looking for something like the old, EC comic, the Tales from the Crypt fun that everybody had when they were kids, when they went to the 7-Eleven and got comic books. Before that world was ruined by collectors. I used to stalk the UPS guy going to our local 7-Eleven every Friday because I wanted to get my Swamp Thing comic book. That was my comic book when I was a kid. And I wanted that fun, and I found out that she loved EC Comics too. And then after I did that, I approached the publisher and said, I would like to use these in a series that I'm going to do of different novels covering different aspects of horror and stuff like that. And I want to do it as like a old Tales from the Crypt kind of thing, where each book will be a different and independent story. And they said they love the idea, but they're going to have somebody else do the work. I looked him right in the eye and I said, if you do that, you will not have my books, because I did put a clause in the contract that I had total say on this series and the kind of artwork that it would have, because I wanted it to preserve that 9-year-old boy waiting at the 7-Eleven for, like in the Creep Show, waiting for the latest delivery of the comic book. And that's what I wanted to do. I am finishing up one that's going to be the third one in that series. That's called Battle Not with Monsters. And basically it's paranormal investigation gone to the 10th level of hell.
I have a note here too, by the way, from my research assistant. Because we have so many interviews lined up, he gives me a hand in pulling together information on my interview guests. But Matt has left me a note on this that says, I want those covers on a shirt, especially Drop Dead Gorgeous.
I'm thinking about doing that, but I'm not into the marketing. If the publisher wants to do that, they have my blessing.
Well, tell them they'll at least sell one.
That would be great. Drop Dead Gorgeous was probably my subconscious way of telling myself it was time to become Allison, because it's demented. I'll say that it's not for the timid, and parental discretion is advised.
Well, that's all the good stories have that involved.
Yes, it's the story about a man that cheats on his wife, and she idolizes him, and he's the center of her universe. And she's been working on this lab tech genetic thing. And just when it gets done, she finds her husband in bed with another woman, goes bonkers. And he wakes up after he's been knocked out, and he's in the basement. The basement is her own personal lab. And like I said, she's a geneticist. So she says, I'm going to make sure that you never cheat on another woman again. So inch by inch, from the marrow of his bones to the outside of his skin, she turns him into the most beautiful woman science can make. That's got to be frightening to any heterosexual male, to slowly watch themselves being turned into a woman. Me, I dig it, but it's not anybody else's cup of cake. But it's the story of, it's a personal horror about being turned into something that you don't want to be, and waking up one morning and finding out that you have no other avenue to go in. You have to do this.
I love that. I really do. And it's a very, like you said, it's a very personal story in a way, so.
And there's a few moments in that story that when I was writing, have you ever, when you're writing a story and it becomes too personal, you have to stop and back away from it? Because
characters, yes, not the stories.
Yes. Because you're doing something, you're doing something good, but you don't want the id in the back of your mind to either hearts and flowers it and ruin it, or purposely avoid what the word flow that's coming through your mind Either way, it messes up the story. And you just got to stop and say, okay, I'll pick this up again tomorrow or next week.
Mine was writing the character of Arthur in my story. He is a direct rip of my grandfather. And I loved my grandfather endlessly. He and my grandmother protected me and kept me safe from all the abuse and stuff I had to deal with at home. I spent a lot of my weekends and my summers with my grandparents. And when I was writing my short story, there were several points because there's really only two characters in the story. And as I was writing out the info for Arthur, I broke down in tears probably a good 7 times.
Been there, done that.
Because I was just pumping everything I could to try to bring my grandfather back to life.
Yes. Fiction can be fun, but it can also be frighteningly fun. It does hit home sometimes. And I honestly believe that if you're writing something and you don't love what you're writing, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I had kept notes for years, and when I sat down to write it, I wrote it in one day. Like literally from start to finish, I collected all of my notes, and I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, it has to happen now. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep procrastinating.
Oh, sitting in front of that. Well, when I first started, I used an old manual Royal typewriter. That was a 1947 issue. I still have it too, but I don't use it. It's a conversation piece in the front room. I started with a Royal typewriter, and I'm up now to computers and stuff like that. I look at it as kind of like a mental appendix. It's a part of who I am. When I'm touching the keys and I'm writing and everything, we're almost one. We have a symbiotic kind of existence. I can't complete what I'm doing unless it's there, and it can't do anything if I'm not trying to complete what I'm doing while I'm writing. It's weird, but that's the way I look at it.
And a blank page, the very first page, is the most terrifying and exciting thing on the face of the planet.
Yes.
And
I always like that one comedy that Billy Crystal and Danny DeVito did, Throw Mama from the Train.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I have writer's block, it's sort of an inside joke. My friends say, how's the writing? I go, the night was.
The night was what?
And it's like, that's the gimmick through the whole book, the whole movie. The night was.
It's funny you mentioned an old typewriter. I kind of have the best of both worlds. I don't know if you can see, but I have typewriter keys on my keyboard.
Instantly love it.
And they have that clack. Yeah, that.
Does it do the ding?
No, it does not. But I do in my head when I get to the end of a sentence.
Now, it took me a long time to miss the ding and the fact that you didn't have to up it 2 notches and put the tray back. Kids today, they're missing out so much.
And they don't even know.
No, they don't. It's like,
oh, what are you talking about, kids? You just turned 21.
You're right. I like you a lot.
Well, I told you. Yeah, I told you in the beginning. I wasn't going to say what birthday it was, just that you had a birthday. I was raised right.
I usually tell people I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I do know what 8-track tape players and disco was.
Well, so do I. What's old is new again. So hey.
I never thought bell bottoms would come back.
I'm glad they did. They were great.
I like hip huggers myself.
I don't like tight clothing. I never have.
Well, when I first started my path, I knew that I would have to lose some body mass. Hormones took care of most of that. But when I started, I was like 240. Now I'm down to 178. My goal is 160 or 165. I'm 5'9", so that should be a good, basic platform to start conveying and contouring with.
Again, I was raised right. You don't ask a woman her age or her weight.
I don't mind.
Well, I didn't ask. You offered it freely.
Woo.
All right. So other than outside of Sally House, are there any other personal experiences that got you interested in the paranormal? You're into you're almost like a teenage boy in the sense of all of your interests, because you're into comic books, you're into video games, you're into aliens, the paranormal, you know. What really brought you into the fun world of what might be?
When I was little, by little I mean before before payphones were replaced and stuff like that, there was 3 programs that I would watch religiously. The Twilight Zone, One Step Beyond, and there was another series that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy called In Search Of. And I loved all these programs. And when I was watching them, it was so much fun. And finally, I asked a friend of mine, I said, is there a way that you can do all this in one glob, you know, in one group? And he said, yeah, it's called the Paranormal. I said, oh, okay. And then I started picking up from there. I would read Hans Holzer. I read every single one of his books. That man's got more degrees than a thermometer. He was an excellent parapsychologist. A little hokey, a little cheesy, but he grabbed me by the heart and the mind. And there was one quote that he said that stayed with me forever. He said, ghosts, they don't mean to haunt out of spite, because ghosts don't know that they are dead. And that was one layer that got me interested in the paranormal. The other one was the fact that we lived in this one house that every now and then, out of the corner of my eye, I would see an old lady sitting in a rocking chair. It wasn't my grandmother, and we didn't have a rocking chair at all in the house. I'd go tell my dad, you know, and all that stuff. He says, you're just daydreaming. You're like, you know, fantasy. And I admit I still have a vivid imagination and all that, but
No.
But I would keep seeing this old lady that would be sitting in a rocking chair. And then finally I went and I asked some of the neighbors, I said, was there a elderly lady that used to live in the place? And one of them said, yeah, her name was Gladys. And she would sit in a rocking chair by the window and just, you know, that was her pastime. That's what she did. She, you know, knit and stuff. I never did see her knit, but she would always be looking out the window, slowly rocking back and forth. She wasn't harmful. She was just there. That, I guess probably that was her slice of heaven.
And then I want to know what your research process for Stranger Than Fiction, True Stories of the Paranormal was.
Okay. Being a skeptic, what I did is I just scoured through and I took the facts. I listed all the facts on a paper, like a bullet points, like when I did the disappearance of Flight 19. I would just put down all the facts, and then knowing the facts, I, as a storyteller, would tell the facts in the form of a story. I'm not trying to prove or disprove a thing, because it's not my job to tell people this is what you will believe. My job is to put a seed in their mind that could sprout up and help them discover it on their own. And when I tell people, when you read this book, even though I've had experience with the paranormal, I am not a true paranormal investigator. Look at me as a storyteller. I'm telling this from the point of view of a storyteller. And in that book, I tell stories that, like I said, it starts off with the disappearance of Flight 19. And it ends with the sort of dubious eyewitnessing of a wreck on the top of Mount Ararat that people claim is Noah's Ark. Now, I personally think that it's not. I give my own, in some stories, I give my own conclusion.
Opinions.
And my opinion on that is that perhaps a long time ago in the Middle Ages, some very religious monks went up to the top of this mountain and created a church that has been forgotten. And they used the dimensions of the ark to build this church. And if there is anything left up there, that's probably what they are seeing. Now, to the faithful, if you want to believe it's Noah's Ark, I say go for it. Whatever makes you happy, whatever makes the story live for you. That's what I want you to grab onto when you read these stories. I mean, other religious things that I touch on that is what really was the Star of Bethlehem, the Shroud of Turin. It's basically, I think that's it as far as the religious goes. But the Shroud of Turin's always fascinated me. I mean, there's just that one question with that one question: what if? What if it could be real? Now, carbon dating has kind of solved that mystery for us, but to the devout, science isn't exactly the end of a question. It's just the beginning of another debate.
I just assume if the Shroud of Turin was real, then that means Jesus was made out of bacon, because bacon stains don't come out of anything.
Well, no, he was Jewish. He didn't like bacon.
We don't know that for a fact.
That's true, but it always amazes me when you got fanatics like the Nazis and all that, and they're doing what they did and the crimes against humanity. I wonder, did anybody ever go up to them and say, you know, that church that you go to every Sunday, Jesus was Jewish? Mm-hmm. I've always wondered that.
Well, there's rumors that Hitler was half Jewish.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the things that go bump in the night or the spooky stuff, outside of your own work,
yeah,
what is one of your favorite things to turn to for inspiration?
That's hard because I get my inspiration from almost everything.
It's a bullshit question, I know.
I'll give you an example. Dark Passenger, which to me is my favorite book. I love that book to death because I'm a Titanic nerd. I love everything about the Titanic. I was watching in 1985, I was watching this documentary that was live from Paris, France. It was Return to the Titanic, and it was just when they just discovered the wreck and people hadn't gone down there yet to ruin it. It was hosted by the late, great Telly Savalas, and he was talking on this documentary, and one of the things he mentioned was the curse of the mummy's case. There was a mummy's case that was in the cargo hold of the Titanic, going to the New York Museum of Natural History. I heard that, it planted a seed, and it simmered for decades. But I took it, and I added steroids to it, and I said, what if it wasn't the iceberg that sank the Titanic? What if it was a mummy's curse? And what if it was actually a genuine Hammer horror style mummy? And basically Dark Passenger is my homage to all the Amicus and Hammer horror films. And I would have to say a little Basil Rathbone, Sherlock Holmes stories too, because I had so much fun writing it. Have you ever written something and at the end of the story, you kind of felt a little lamenting because you didn't want it to end?
Yes.
That was Dark Passenger for me.
Yeah, you feel kind of empty and hollow, and like a piece of you is missing all of a sudden. Yes,
but at the same time, it's like I knew that this was good. I knew that, I mean, it's magic. I mean, what separates this, besides being a horror novel, from all the other Titanic stories is that usually in most of the Titanic movies, it's like we're watching the passengers and what they're going through, and that's all important, yes. But in this story, there is a series of murders that are taking place on the Titanic, and the captain's wondering, should he just turn tail and go back to Southampton and have the authorities take care of this, or contact the authorities in New York and take care of it once they get there? There's the vehicle of everybody's reading this knowing that the ship's going to sink. So I made these characters that these readers would get invested in. Will they survive the Titanic disaster? That got that was so exciting. The theories that at the time that people were having about how the Titanic sank, or that Harlan and Wolff or the White Star Line did cost cuts to take away the safety and protocol, because Thomas Andrews, the naval architect wanted to be double bottom. He wanted the watertight compartments to be all sealed at one deck, one level, and 64 lifeboats on board. All those were changed by Bruce Ismay. It ended from 64 lifeboats to just 16 and 2 collapsibles.
Mm-hmm.
So that the irony of that, and the fact that the man that knew more about the Titanic than he did about his house. He built it. He designed it, and all the guilt that he would have to go through, knowing that these people are dying because he caved in. And having said that, I don't know if that was the truth, but it was a different world back then.
Yeah.
And I put myself in the character of Dennis Parker, the archaeologist who found it, because at one time I wanted to be an archaeologist. I love history. And his best friend by happenstance seems to be Thomas Andrews. They knew each other when they were kids. He was the wealthy inheritor of a railroad tycoon, his father's fortune. So he used his fortune to go out and do what Howard Carter couldn't, because he was, strapped by funding and stuff like that. But it's a wonderful story. The crew actually plays a part in the storyline. Captain Smith is involved in every investigation. He's talking to the doctor. He's talking to the Scotland Yard. There's a retired Scotland Yard detective that's on board who gets a lot of guff because he's in second class. He's a second class passenger, and he's going around talking to first class people. So the classism that existed back in the Gilded Age is a vital part of that story. And it hinders him most of the time when he wants to try to find out who the killer was. He thinks it's like a Jack the Ripper-esque type person. And that's his goal. And everyone else is saying, it didn't look like Jack the Ripper to me. It's a wonderful story.
I'm curious, did you get to go see the Titanic exhibit when it traveled the country?
Yes. And it got to the point where my friends had to literally bodily pull me out of there, because I was seeing stuff that that I always read about, but never. I mean, I got to see the megaphone that Captain Smith used trying to persuade the lifeboats that didn't have any people to come back to pick up more. And the wives' tale. There's a wives' tale that says that when Captain Smith used the megaphone, he told everybody, abandon ship, every man for themselves. There's another one that says, he said, be British, fellows, be British. So I decided to up that ante. And when I wrote that, I put the fiction into my fiction. He says both those things. And I did things to it that I wish, would have been true. Like Charles Lightoller and First Officer Murdoch did try to save the ship, but they were stopped by the magic of the evil spirit of the mummy. While they were doing what they could to save the ship while the iceberg's coming, she's back at the aft bridge and taken over, and she's piloting the boat, not them. Now, what Officer Murdoch wanted to do, because he was on board the Olympic, the Titanic's older sister ship, he knew the mechanics of the Olympic class steamship. The only way he knew that they could survive was to ram the berg head on. The first 4 compartments would have been absolutely collapsed, and over 500 steerage passengers would have died. But they died anyway. Even before the first lifeboat was lowered into the water, they already drowned down in the bow. And while he was doing that, he said, slow ahead. She's doing hard to starboard, because she's getting helps from her gods and the magic and the wisdom of the universe to help her destroy this ship to make it her funeral barge. See, I love stuff like that. Yeah. If even if it didn't happen, I would have liked to have believed that somewhere down the line, all these people, especially Thomas Andrews, they said that he just went into catatonic shock because he was trying to think of ways to save these people, or at least keep the boat afloat until the Carpathia arrived, which was the rescue ship. And it's these things, what would I have done if I was one of these people kind of person that just kept the book alive?
I think that's the fun of being a fiction writer and playing with actual historical events.
Yes.
Is you can rewrite things either how you wish they would go, like you said, or you can make them so fantastical that they actually explain things better than the reality.
And I did put the reality in there, but because of the ignorance of nobody going down to see the wreck, they didn't, that's how they didn't perceive it happening until we actually found out that the Titanic did break in two, and how that it wasn't a 300-foot gash. It was just like dots and dashes and rivets being popped and stuff like that. And I also put in there, I don't know if it's true, but I did put in there that the iceberg broke the keel. So even if they could save the ship was going down.
All right, moving on. I have a 3-part question.
Sure.
So what are some of the routines that have helped you get into the right headspace for creating? The second part is the do's and don'ts of the writing world. And the third part is everyone is different, but what gets your creativity flowing personally?
All right. Before I write, I have to turn off the television. And when I have music on, it's usually instrumental, classical music or something like that, because words that go into my head muck up the words coming from my head. I have to be centered. If I'm not centered, I meditate for a bit. Because like I said, once that movie starts in my mind's eye, I want it to flow effortlessly. So I do that, sort of my Zen writing Buddha stuff. When I'm, like I said, I look at it in my mind's eye as of this Panavision movie that's taking place. And sometimes when you're like, you've ever written something, you go to the 3rd chapter and you go, this isn't going to work. So you just start from scratch. That hurts because it's like you've already spent all this time and effort building. So one of the things that I do before I start writing is that I will write out a character outline of all my characters. I will put, whether they're a protagonist or an antagonist, or if they're just, I call them middle of the road people, the ones that they're just there and they move the characters into what they want to do, supporting characters kind of thing. And then I write out a chapter by chapter story outline. It does not necessarily have to be typed in stone. So I know basically what I'm going to do in each chapter, and I have bullet points of certain things that I want to cover in each chapter, like stories and questions about the characters, something that happened in their life, motivation that helps or haunts them, kind of thing. And usually when I write, I could write anywhere from 500 to 5,000 words. It's all according to how much in the zone I am. There are many times, and I'm sure this happened to you, where you'll look up at the clock and it'd be like 2 p.m. and you're looking down and you're writing and you're writing and you're writing. And relatively speaking, in your mind, you're thinking like maybe an hour's gone by. And then you look up, it's 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
You're buzzed out. You don't have any exhaustion. You're so concentrated on what you're doing. Your body's just there going, I'm waiting. And it's like, it's an amazing, if only we could do that with work.
Well, like you say, it's a movie that starts in your mind. And I am very much the type that binge watches. So that's kind of where I see it for me, is my brain is putting forth a movie that I desperately want to see.
Oh God, yes.
And so as I'm typing it out, for me, it is like binge watching. Like I'm hooked. What's going to come out of me next? What's going to come out of me next? What's going to come out of me next?
Creativity is a drug, and it's the best kind, because like any drug, it promises and has dark, undercurrents, because I have created stuff that I thought was crap, and I felt like that for days until I got back up on the saddle and actually turned the crap into crap with glitter in it.
Right. Polish that turd.
Yeah, and that to me, that's the magic of what we do.
The only
Now, as far,
downside is you can't go to the corner dealer and get a nickel bag of creativity.
God, I wish I could.
And for all of you watching this, they're like, just smoke weed, man. It's the same thing. No, it's not. It's not. It's very much not.
It's a drug. It's a drug all itself. As far as the dark side or charlatan side of writing, the best advice I can give is no matter what, and if you do this because you need to do it, I respect that, but I don't believe in people paying to have their own work published. The reason I say that is the publisher, when they take your work and they give you money and invest in you, this is a gamble they're taking. They are motivated to make it work. Whereas if you go to a vanity press or something like that, you pay them up front. They've already made their money.
Mm-hmm.
The hard work is on you. And unless you're known, guess what? You're going to have the same problems that those kids have when they're trying to sell those dollar charity chocolate bars to get the school bus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go away. Boom. Doors are going to slam in front of your face. So, but if you believe in your work so much, sometimes it has paid off. There have been writers who have started that way. Mark Twain started that way. Edgar Allan Poe started that way. Laurel Ingalls Wilder started that way. And through perseverance and the fact that their works were good, someone came along and either their daughter or a son or something probably got their attention. You know, it's getting content this person. Maybe we can sell it for $1. But just if you go into a deal and you've got a voice in the back of your mind going, I don't know, listen to it.
Yeah, listen to your gut.
Yeah, it's listening to what your ego is trying to make you ignore.
That's why I self-published.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I love the fact that Amazon gives a market to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. And granted, their algorithm isn't kind to the upstarts. However, if you persist at it, keep doing it, anything is possible.
Yeah, I wrote my story like 2 or 3 years ago, and I think I've sold like 7 copies of it at this point. I'm happy with that. Like I didn't write it like I'm gonna get rich. I wrote it because I needed this story out of my fucking head.
I get that. I understand that.
So of all of your many credits, Knowing God seems incredibly adaptable for a series or big screen treatment. Outside of that, what property of yours do you wish to see translated to a visual medium, or that you think could be translated to a visual medium the easiest?
I think Stranger Than Fiction would make a good weekly paranormal show.
Like an anthology?
Yes. You know, like I said, One Step Beyond or In Search Of. You know, It could be, 1 week the Titanic, the next week the Amityville Horror, which I believe was probably the greatest creative way to defraud on a mortgage I have ever encountered in my life. I honestly don't believe that the DeFeos had anything. Now, the the Lutzes, they're the hokey. The DeFeos, they had their own little superstitious horror paranormal stuff going on, and that's the one that I would like to explore. But that would be a great weekly series. Also, I would like to see them make a movie out of Dark Passenger. I don't think they could do Drop Dead Gorgeous unless it was like on HBO Max or something like that.
But I mean, as time has moved on, that is a completely viable option at this point, though.
I would love to see all my EC Comic-esque titles be turned into something. It would be wonderful. I do have one historical novel that I think would make an excellent motion picture. It's called Selznick's Folly, and it's a fictional account of the making of Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
And the reason why it was called Selznick's Folly is that at the time in the golden age of Hollywood, he and Selznick International Pictures was an independent studio, and they were looked at and reviled the way uh, publishers look at independent authors today. But David Selznick was not like a upstart who just had dreams. He had experience too. He was the first producer in Hollywood to get a film credit. He worked for RKO Pictures. He was responsible for the classic King Kong. He helped produce that. And then when he went over to do his own pictures at Selznick International Pictures, the average motion picture at that time was anywhere from 70 to maybe 90 minutes long and cost possibly $20,000 to $25,000 each. Now today we look at that and say it's chump change, but back then in $1930, that was a shit ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he not only attained the #1 New York bestseller of his age, he did a motion picture that was 3 hours and 57 minutes long and cost back in 1938 $3 million. Every newspaper in the company, was being told this guy is going to fall flat on his ass, and it's an excellent example to tell upstarts and independents that there's nowhere they can go but down.
Sounds like Howard Hughes's movie that he was trying to shoot.
Yeah, and that's when someone, I don't remember the reporter's name, but there was somebody that came up with instead of calling it a white elephant, they called it Selznick's Folly because it was doomed to fail. And when I read that title stuck. I'm going, that would be an excellent title for it. And it talks about everything in the book about David O. Selznick's drug problems, the nefarious situation of Vivian Leigh and Laurence Olivier, and the fact that she was still married and abandoned her husband and daughter of the time. Talked about Clark Gable being shipped from MGM to work in what he thought was an upstart dog and pony show. And it talked about his feeling like he was being like put around the room like a prostitute. And the fact that he couldn't dance, and he was very agoraphobic. He didn't like to be around people too much, which is weird because he became one of the greatest stars of his age. And all the dynamics of working with Margaret Mitchell, who was not easy to work with, and the fact that he had to go through so many people to find the perfect Scarlet. Vivian Leigh was a nobody. She did one movie in England at the time called Fire Over England, and she was so unknown. And then there was like the pressure of finding Rhett Butler when the public demanded Clark Gable. And at the time that when he was looking for it, he wanted Ronald Colman because that was an actor that was under his contract. All the politics of old Hollywood and how they made his life miserable trying to do this movie. And then it goes from the story arc of Selznick's Folly goes from Margaret Mitchell when she's 12 years old and her mother telling her about the Civil War and looking at old abandoned, burnt out mansions, to the successful night of doing a screening to a captured audience so that they could get feedback on the movie and what needed to be done, and how they come outside and, Selznick knows, and no matter what, we did a damn good picture. Mm-hmm. It's like the individual person's gut, to look at the facts and say, nah, I don't think so.
Any upcoming projects you want to tell us about? Anything in the works?
Well, like I said, I'm doing a third book in my EC Comic-esque series. That's going to be called Battle Not with Monsters. And I'm taking a few of the experiences that I had as a paranormal investigator in training and adding steroids to them. And, because we did a few things when we were first starting that psychics would later tell me that was dangerous to do. And
to tell.
Yeah. Like a person shouldn't fake a Ouija board because it will anger the spirits. Or someone who jokes in the face of somebody's spiritual tragedy. Like, oh, this person committed suicide. Oh, was she that ugly? That kind of stuff. And the fact that skeptics, counting myself as one of them, have a certain arrogance about them when they're dealing with the unknown. Somebody just threw somebody pulling a joke. Somebody's got to stop doing this. And the fact that you don't respect. When I first got into paranormal investigation, I did it because it's fun. I didn't respect what's the word I'm looking for? How to do it. I was going, okay. I mean, the psychic
process.
Yeah, the process. Yes, thank you. So I took all that and used steroids and put coulda, woulda, shoulda in it, and threw in The Last House on the Left and a couple things like that. And I hope it's going to be a good, frightening paranormal experience for those who read it.
I learned fairly early on not to invoke the ire of the spirit world because whether you believe it or not, or believe in it or not, those of you that are watching this, I come from a line of witches. I actually ended up finding out not too awful long ago, but it explained a lot of things.
Huh.
I don't like graveyards. You cannot get me into one.
Who does? I did go and visit Stoll Cemetery.
Will not set foot in one. I don't care how famous or who's in it or anything like that. I've come to realize that I am an antenna, and they like me. They like me a lot.
Well, spirits or ghosts can attach to a person and follow them to their home.
That's why I don't touch people, because I get what's the best way to say it? Vibes. I don't like shaking hands because I pick up too much off the other person. I don't like it. It sometimes also will ruin the potential of an interaction or business or anything like that. Because if I get a bad vibe off you from touching you, I'm done. I'm out. Gone. So I typically will fist bump because for some reason the palm of my hand seems to matter. And they like I said, they like to hang around me.
Well, I've been around so many people who were professional ghost hunters to know that there's a lot of logic into what you're saying, because I've seen them being affected by the fact that they've come against energy that is like very, very negative. Like I went to the Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City, and I took the ghost tour. Mm-hmm. And there was this one lady. She was always bubbly and happy. I mean, she was Doris Day and Sandra Dee all rolled up into one. And when we went through the women's prison and we went through the old solitary confinement there, she was a totally different person. She was grumpy. She was evil. She was dark. Nobody liked looking at her. And then when we came outside, it was like the flip of a switch. She went back to being happy and smiling and stuff. She could not explain it.
I rarely go out in public. I'm not agoraphobic, and it has nothing to do with the pandemic or anything like that. I've never been a big fan of public spaces to begin with, but my wife is really what noticed it. And it's within the last 5 to 6 years that we've been married that really started to understand what's going on with me. I could walk into a grocery store happy as a clam, and I could pass by somebody who is angry or having a bad day or carrying something with them, and it attaches to me, and my attitude will change almost instantly. And it takes a good couple of hours.
Are you a medium?
No, I actually wear like a 3X.
Touche.
I'm not going to say that I am, but I'm not going to say that if I were to take the time to develop what seems to be there already, that I couldn't be. I'm very sensitive, and not in the typical, oh my God, they're a snowflake type of way. I'm very sensitive to energies, and it is in my best interest to keep to myself most of the time.
Discretion is the better part of valor.
Yep. Personal responsibility. I'm a big fan of it. So yeah, I get it. And, my wife has wanted me to go with her to, paranormal locations. And I just look at her and be like, yeah, the witch wants to take the antenna to the fucking ghost museum. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Let's do that.
It's like, you came with dynamite, I got nitroglycerin.
Yeah. So, okay. I know you're a big nerd and I have to ask, who's your favorite doctor?
Who's my favorite doctor?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tie. I like Dr. McCoy. He's my favorite doctor, fictional.
Oh, you missed what I meant. I guess I get it because, I said nerd. I meant the other doctor. Because in my mind, as much as I love Star Trek, there is only one doctor.
Okay. 10.
10?
10.
Yeah. Why?
Because I like the way, when he thought, the quirkiness of his character, and he had great hair.
Yeah.
I like the dynamic that was between him and Rose Tyler.
Oh, Rose is by far my favorite companion.
Yes. She survived 2 doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Nine, I do respect 9 because Christopher Eccleston, he had a hell of a time with fans because they were very cruel to him because of the legacy that he was following up on, because there were 8 doctors before him.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, they didn't have half the production money that the new Doctor Who had, but he left Doctor Who for a reason, because he did not like opening up his mail and finding that it was not so fan mail.
I have a theory about the new Doctor Who. More so the new age Doctor Who, not the upcoming Doctor Swap. So I recently introduced a friend of mine to Doctor Who. I started him with Eccleston.
It's a good place to start.
Well, otherwise we got to go back through almost 50 years and it'll take forever. I'm down for it. But if you're introducing somebody to it, it's best to start where it's, got some production value to it. Otherwise they lose interest. But so from 9, 10, and 11 and 12, I will say. So there is basically what we're watching, in my opinion, is the emotional therapy of the Doctor.
I can dig that. Yeah.
And my reason for this is 9 is very angry.
Yes.
10 is angry but wild. 11 is almost like a regression. He's a grown adult, but very childlike.
Yes.
And through the course of 9, 10, and 11, he eventually does come to terms with what happened in Gallifrey and his role in it. And he also ends up finding out, what his role actually was, because apparently he had his own little blocks in place. You get through that, it's a therapy session. And that's why he got younger with 11, in my opinion, is because he was blocking everything out, and so he forced himself into a regression almost. And then you get to Capaldi, and we're back to the crotchety old man that we all love.
Yeah, with sort of a respectful nod to the first Doctor.
He was able to become himself again, in a way.
And did you notice that Capaldi's jacket that had the red flaps inside? Big tribute, I think, to the third Doctor.
Yeah.
The third Doctor's cape was kind of that way.
My favorite line, though, from the Capaldi era is like early on in the series. I want to say it's like one of the first 2 episodes when he meets up with his companion. And when he introduces her to this group, I want to say it's a group of aliens, and he's fumbling for what to call her. And she spouts off, "I'm his caretaker." And he says, "Yeah, she cares, so I don't have to."
I remember.
So
Yeah,
who's your favorite companion then?
actually, I love them all, but my top ones, I like Donna Noble because of all of them, she's the one that when she stopped being the doctor's companion, actually totally 100% imploded her universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked her because, oh, I would have loved to have seen her and Eccleston, Donna Noble and Doc, because they would have killed each other.
Yeah.
After Donald Noble, I liked the Pawns.
Yeah.
I liked the Pawns, and of course Rose. And I also liked Miss Jones, Dr. Jones.
Martha.
Yes, but they're the ones. There's rarely a companion that I didn't like. When they went to the new Doctor Who, I didn't really find that much heart in me to attach myself to one of the companions, because very, very often I would attach myself to a companion and vicariously live their adventure while they're standing at the doctor's side. Whereas the new ones are so damn PC, I turn the channel and watch football.
Yeah. I gotta say, and this is not, your typical macho, Cro-Magnon mindset. I just couldn't get into Jodie Whittaker. I tried. I tried and I tried, and like normally, like with every TV series and every new iteration of Doctor Who, I give it 3 episodes. And I just couldn't connect. And I felt terrible about it. I felt like a complete jackass, because like here we have this monumental moment in Doctor Who history, because the Doctor is no longer a male. The Doctor is now female. Still not a ginger though. And I could not connect enough to enjoy the show. And I honestly felt terrible about it, because I couldn't come up with a reason as to why. And the only thing that I kept coming back to is, well, they changed it from a man to a woman, and now you have nothing to identify with. You're part of the problem. And I don't think that that's the case, because after doing online reading and stuff like that, Jodie Whittaker was not necessarily a fan favorite to begin with. And the writing, I think, had a lot to do with it too, is because the stories, like you said, they're a little more PC than I need.
Yeah. Fiction is supposed to be fun. Now, occasionally the fun does teach, like the classic Star Trek or Twilight Zone or Doctor Who for that matter. But when it's force-fed down someone's throat, no matter how eloquent it is written, no matter how good the plot is, if you don't want to eat Brussels sprouts, you're not going to eat Brussels sprouts.
Now, I will tell you, had they chosen the actress that plays River Song to be the female Doctor, on board 100%, would have been there. I don't care how shitty the writing was.
And it would have made perfect sense.
It would have. Like, I don't know why they didn't reach out. I don't know if they did or they didn't, but Alex Kingston would have been the perfect female Doctor.
I met her at a Dragon Con. She is beautiful. She is very, very good with the public. She talked to me for a good 20 minutes. I'm sure the guys that were standing behind me were pissed. And she told me I was beautiful, so that's cool.
Yeah. I'm eager to see where they go with the next Doctor. There are rumors abound.
I heard that David Tennant might come back.
And Donna.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true. It'd be interesting to see how they work it storyline wise. Because what I've read is, if he did come back, he wouldn't be the 10th Doctor again. He would look like it, but it would be a completely new iteration.
Maybe because, sometimes when they get a new Doctor, the TARDIS goes through a remodel too.
Yeah.
Maybe in the process of him going through his transformation, something from the heart of the TARDIS comes out like the memory bank or something like that and just wishes by him, and he grabs onto that image of the 10th Doctor.
Well, supposedly in the lore, female Time Lords are stronger and more adept than male Time Lords at choosing their next form.
That's cool. I like that.
That's why River once in the story of the ponds, that's why River was able to change how she looked a couple of times after she had absorbed the energy from the TARDIS, is she was able to do it at will.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
They should do with that.
Female Time Lords are a lot stronger than the males.
And we know from the one episode where the TARDIS got a chance to talk to the Doctor.
The Doctor's wife.
Yes. And Neil Gaiman wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
Very great piece, and says that I've always loved you, and all that stuff. And maybe there was something about the image of the 10th Doctor and the way that he passed, because he didn't want to go.
No.
And
the single most heartbreaking.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie about the making of Doctor Who? I think it was called A Journey Through Time and Space.
No, I don't think so.
You need to see that, because there's a scene there where the actor is playing the first Doctor, and he realizes that he's getting dementia and that he can't remember his lines. And he goes back to the set and he turns on the set, and all the whiz bangs and stuff on the TARDIS set are going. And he looks down and he kind of looks up and he says, "But I don't want to go." Mirroring what David Tennant said. And then as he's getting ready to leave, there's a noise behind him. So he turns around and looks, and standing behind him is Matt Smith, smiling at him. And then he blinks his eyes and it's gone. It's like an imaginary thing. But they did that with very good taste. And unfortunately, I'm sure that the real life reason of how he left with dementia and all that wasn't so poetic.
Yeah, like I said, that there have been a few moments in the history of Doctor Who that have been truly heartbreaking. The story of the ponds being lost in time, essentially, and Tennant's regeneration when he said, "I don't want to go."
I cried.
Oh, I have no issue handing over my man card right now saying, yes, I cried as well. Even thinking about it, I can feel that lump in my throat and my eyes are watering up a little bit. And it's just like,
Good fiction. Good fiction does that.
Okay. I got a few more questions and then we'll move into our interview roulette. Because I just realized we've been talking for almost 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Anne Rice recently passed away. My research assistant had a question here. How, if all, did that affect you?
I did like the Vampire Chronicles, and Interview with a Vampire was a masterpiece. Some of the work that she did was beautiful. I mean, I even like some of the non-vampire. I like Ramses the Mummy. I thought that was cool. That inspired me a little. It does. One of the things about writing, the magic, is that even when the mortal is gone, their voice lives on. And I'm sure there's going to be kids and adults alike in the future, not yet born, who's going to be reading her stuff and going, this is cool. Of course, the vampire Lestat to me was forced. I thought that she just realized, okay, I got a bestseller here and my publisher's making me do this. That's what I got from that. It's still a good work, but it was forced. To be able to leave something behind that people can be inspired with and be entertained with, and for that one moment, reality is broken. I mean, when somebody like that, a prolific writer that dies like that, I do mourn it because of the simple fact that we've lost the mortal who made that world possible. It does bother me. I mean, on the day that Stephen King passes, I will mourn that day because he inspired me too. I mean, I mourned when Richard Matheson died. He was my original inspiration. He was my muse. But with printed word, books, Kindles, and all the invents that are yet to come, they get the cheap death, because even as they are gone and their mortal coil is long turned to dust, their words live on, and that's important.
You mentioned what comes next after Kindles, and my brain immediately went to, I don't care what it is, as long as it isn't those fucking spinning rings that the Eloy had.
Oh, boom.
For those of you out there, that's an H.G. Wells time machine reference. Nobody's probably going to get that.
If I remember right, the actress that played Mina just recently passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I had a big crush on her, by the way.
All right. And then the last question that I have here of the regular questions, not the ones that you randomly picked. When you reach a mental block, when you're writing, writer's block, I know you tend to dive into horror movies. Is there a go-to film that has the ability to get your head where it needs to be creatively, like a go-to classic?
The Legend of Hill House.
Yeah.
To me, it's sort of like the Breakfast Club of the paranormal horror world, because you got the medium, you got the scientist, you got the skeptic. You got a whole hodgepodge of characters trying to figure out the mystery of this haunted house.
Yeah, Scooby-Dooing it up.
Yes, I love that stuff.
All right. Are you ready to play interview roulette?
Sure.
Well, we're going to, whether you are. All right. So before we started our interview, I had you pick 5 numbers randomly off the top of your head, and I've transposed the questions over. The first one, what is something that you don't mind paying more money for?
Good food.
What's your go-to? What's your favorite cuisine?
A ribeye steak, mashed potatoes, and usually French almondine green beans.
All right. Now the real question, how do you take your steak?
Medium rare.
Good girl. What are 3 of your favorite music venues in the world? Either ones that you've been to or ones that you hope to see before you die.
I would like to see Lindsey Sterling in concert, because that woman plays a violin like I have never seen anybody play a violin.
I said venues. That's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind getting an extra answer out of you, but I just wanted to make sure you heard me.
Classical. I like classic rock from the 50s and the 60s. Not that the 70s weren't a great decade. Usually when I'm into writing, I like listening to John Williams and the movie soundtracks, so I can get that dun, 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 that stuff. It inspires me. It fuels my mind's eye to make my own little thing that hopefully one day someone will use when they are inspired.
I'm going to ask the question again. Venue, places, concert halls.
I'm kind of a nerd. I stay at home a lot, but I would like to go to the Hollywood Bowl.
I got you there.
I would like to go to the Hollywood Bowl, because when I was a kid and I lived in Los Angeles, we would mess around. Me and my friends, we would mess around outside of it when it was closed. We didn't dare go in because they had SWAT teams and stuff, crap like that. I would like to go to the Grand Ole Opry. I'm not much of a country and western fan, but there's a lot of history there. I would like to go there. I'd like to go to Carnegie Hall, because that's where I understand all the practice is.
At least 3 of them.
Yes, but when it comes to going to an actual place, the place itself doesn't really hold the magic for me. It's the music or the performer that holds it for me. And usually when someone asks me a question like that, I do kind of break the rules and I go right to the performer themselves. And I like almost all music. I don't like rap. It's not that I don't have anything against it. It's just went up my skirt.
I like hip hop more than rap.
Yeah, that's a little more fun.
Yeah, hip hop has more of a message.
And the other one's just syncopated hate to a 3/4 count.
Yeah, pretty much. Homogenized and packaged in a studio to sell on the radio.
Yeah, yeah. But it's kind of like I don't go out much. And when I do, I'm one of those people. I still shop like a guy. When I go to the store, I go to direct beeline what I'm getting. I might browse every now and then. I'm starting to appreciate browsing, but I want to just get in and out.
Yeah, my wife hates that about me. She's like, let's go window shopping. And I'm like, why?
We don't
Like,
need windows.
Yeah. We don't have the money to even think about window shopping for anything. Why? Like, it's just, my brain is logic. If we have money, then we can think about spending it. If we don't have the money, then there's no reason to think about spending it because we don't have it. And she's like, well, what if when we do? And I'm like, we'll worry about that then. Yeah.
Yeah, we will. That's one of the things I like about being who I am. I've been on both sides of the street, so I got the best of both worlds when it comes to trying to ration things out. I mean, I hate sports, but I understand why people yell at their television screen and stuff like that.
Yep. I've yelled at Doctor Who.
Oh, who hasn't? I want Captain Jack to come back more. He's my favorite character.
Yeah. Well, he had his own spinoff there for a little bit.
Yeah, Torchwood.
Yep.
And I loved it too. It was okay. But I if they ever do a movie about Elon Musk, John Barrowman's agent better push him because he looks almost like him.
Yeah. I think he's too tall, though. I think they'd have to do some funny camera stuff to make him look the right height.
Man, he'd have to work on that accent.
Well, Elon only has that accent when he wants to anyways.
He can want whatever he wants. He's like a gazillion billionaire.
Right. All right. If you could learn any language fluently, which one would you choose?
Japanese.
Yeah? Why?
Mm-hmm. I like that culture. I like the way and the inflection of how they talk. I mean, when you watch the movies, it's like it's fascinating to me when I'm watching the idiosyncrasies of the people around these people. And this guy only goes, huh. And inside that grunt, there's like a million English words that they just said in that one little passage. It's like when I was watching Godzilla movies when I was a kid, their mouth is going yada 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 in the middle of it. Okay, that's cool. Yada 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 yada. What are they saying in the yadas?
Right. Kind of like with the Squid Games, how the translation from Korean into English drops so much context.
Yes, and I've always wanted to go to Japan. I've always thought that the Japanese would like my particular style of horror, and I'm one of those people that believe that it's good manners before you go to another country to at least try to grasp their language.
Yeah, I actually spoke with a podcaster who is a translator, and he said that, because I brought that up too, because that's my mindset. I don't want to go to another country where I can't at least attempt to get by. And he said, well, the thing that you find out is when you travel outside the US, that a lot of other countries, they do speak English and they don't mind teaching the new people. If you genuinely have an interest in trying to learn, they don't mind you fumbling a little bit. You know, they don't mind teaching you, and they do have respect for those that are trying. So yeah, I'm with you. If you're going to a different country, you should at least figure out how to ask where the bathroom is.
Yeah. And besides, when I was a kid, one of my huge geekdoms was I loved the Godzilla, the Gamera, and all the other monster movies that they put out. And it's kind of cool to know the backdrop story of them. It's like they were trying in their own way to, rage against the machine, and also about the things that happened to their country in the 40s and all that. And it's a deep subject, and I like the way that they took something that was horrific, in some cases absurdly silly, and entertain generations of their own children, not to mention me.
Yeah. If you became president, what would be the first law you'd pass?
Well, I would honestly suggest, because I honestly have read the Constitution, and the president can't make a law. It has to go through the body of Congress and then be ratified by the Senate. But if I could.
Yeah, there is the executive order that can.
Yeah. That's a hard question. There's a lot of things I would like to do, but ideologically, I'd have to put transgenders with the Civil Rights Act because it's not specifically listed in there. And I've felt that ugly side of humanity. I've actually been assaulted several times. One was a group of 3 guys that were seriously thinking about punching my ticket. They bent the paper a little, but they didn't punch it because, as I tell people, I speak softly, but I know Aikido. And I wish that there was a way that we could educate our children in a way to understand that the diversity of humanity is what makes humanity what it is.
I agree. All right, the last one for interview roulette. If you could secretly look through the email of any person currently alive, whom would it be?
Oh. Elon Musk, because I want to know what kind of deep, dark secrets that man's hiding from the world. Or Bezos. Yeah. One of those kind of people. I'd like to know the true nature of the monster that's trying to smile at us and say, buy my stuff.
All right, Allison, I want to thank you so much. You have been an absolute joy to speak to.
It's been fun. If you need me to come back, just ask.
I will want you to come back. That's better than needing you to come back.
I had fun.
All right.